just spill your beans, Tommy.
Now, The Lighthouse is special. It's definitely one of the most unique movies that have came out in the last decade. It's surpassed a lot of different features that are prevalent in filmmaking. It stands out on its own as its own medium. Robert Eggers is a very unique director, the worst at creating movies. With The Lighthouse, he created such a unique film that will no doubt stand the test of time. The movie is very simple. It follows a simple story structure, but it propels this story structure in such a way that's unique towards the director's vision. With the director's vision, he likes to create authenticity using historical accuracy. The story focuses on two characters who are unnamed until much later on into the story, with very purposeful intent. We are given so much mystery about these characters, and out of complete honesty, I don't want to tell too much about this movie. I just want to leave a lot of it up to you. It's one thing for me to say, I like this scene, I like this scene, I like this scene, I like this scene, but it's another thing for me to say, these are the things that make this movie stand out on its own, and that's what I'm hoping to do. Because of that, this will 100% be spoiler free. I will not be talking about any particular scenes in the movie. I will just be talking about how it achieves these great emotions, this fear, this uncomfortable feeling inside of you that not many horror movies tend to do with all the one of the first things the movie does so well is an opening shot that sets up the tone, sets up the idea. There's lots of mystery. There's an unknown presence in the air. You know that there's something that's not right. There's lots of mist and grey, and you're introduced with a bordered outline. You don't know what to expect. You've got a unique aspect ratio. Instead of it being 1:1 a complete box, it's 1.199, which allows so much claustrophobia with these two characters. You have the characters stranded alone with all this space, similar towards the Lighthouse Island. What a coincidence! One of the greatest aspects about the movie is just the fact that all the sets are so ridiculously real. Everything was built on set, down to the cabins, the lifeboats, the wardrobes, the furniture, the chairs, the tables, even the even the lighthouse. The lighthouse itself was built for this movie, and you believe everything you see on screen because of what's shown. You see the paint thinning on certain elements, you see wood scratches, you see mud and dirt and water and just damage everywhere, and everything just feels so lived in, and because of that it feels much more dangerous.
All these things are worth getting through because the achievement of your specific vision is that important to you. It overrides all those things.
Well, it's not so much that it overrides those things. Those are the things that are necessary to achieving the vision, you know? So,
but you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, what's the fun in, I mean, you know, there's no fun in shooting this movie in LA on a green screen. And no one's gonna really believe it, and you aren't gonna get the performances. And like it's absolutely true that like no one's gonna shout out and scream like that button on Willem Dafoe's uniform is incorrect, or be excited by the fact that it is correct. But all these little details like are cumulative, and you can feel that that the world is viable. And also Willem and Rob's performances are better because they're in, you know, Rob said this a lot. If you took the camera away, he was in a lighthouse in 1890.
Dressed as he would be, eating what he would, right, yeah.
So
the cast and crew went on to say that they had to sign a contract to say it's okay for them to film here because otherwise they could die.
Marine coordinator Captain William Flower said dramatically, slamming his fists onto the table at a production meeting to warn us of the seriousness of shooting in this location. People have died in Cape Foreshoe.
Yeah.
One of the greatest things about the production design as well is the fact that everything used has an effect on the environment themselves. So if someone were to grab a mug, for example, and throw it against the ground, you'd see the effect that mug has on the environment. It's not just that one mug that breaks. You hear things like the timber creak, you see some legs shake, and just adds a very uneasy environment because you know that everything is so weak, everything can break at any point. One of the best aspects about the movie is just the fact that everyone in the cast and crew had an idea of what they were supposed to do and how they can use the elements to their advantage. And this isn't just talking about Willen Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, this is talking about the director, down to the lighting, down to the gaffer, down to the field of view, down to the blocking in the scene. Everyone had a purpose in making this movie. It's not just, let's point a camera in front of these actors and let them shine, even though they do have their moments to shine. We'll get into that very soon. Because of this, you'll have moments where everything is blocked off. Every frame in the movie looks like a painting. It looks like something plucked straight out of the Louvre from the 1800s. It's so compact and surreal. One of the things you'd see from these screenshots is how the Lighthouse captures atmosphere. This is down to things like lighting and cast and crew behind the camera as much as it is from the cast and crew in front of the camera. So because of this, you'd have super heavy black where there'd be a light, a lamp in the middle of the room, and everything in the background would just be black. You can't see the outline, the aspect ratio at all because the blacks are so rich and thick, and it's very uneasy because you don't know what you're supposed to be looking at. You don't know what is there. It adds a lot of mystery, a lot of loneliness in the tale. The tale has a lot of mystery. You have no idea anything about these characters going into the movie. And I mean that in the sense of a standard story structure. A standard story structure would have first act, introduce the characters, second act continues the story, then third act wraps everything up. Whereas this, we don't have a sense of characters until maybe an hour into the movie. A lot of that comes down to how Robert Eggers directs the movie. Robert Eggers directed this movie with the idea that he wanted you to focus on as much of the character actions as possible because the character actions reveal so much about the character. The way that someone may limp, the way that someone may pat their pocket for a cigarette, the way that someone bumps their head against a roof, the way that someone farts, and the farting's the opening line in the movie, and then it's Oscar worthy. It feels so natural. Another aspect that really brings in the atmosphere is the sound design. The sound design is perfect, absolutely perfect. If you have a surround sound setup, if you have headphones, I'd highly recommend this movie just to test it out. You would be missing out on so much if you were to watch the movie on your fucking telephone.
Get real.
You hear vibrations, you hear a lot of cranking, a lot of wheels, you'd hear a very loud bombastic siren. As well as sound, there's a lot of excellent use of music. The music reminded me so much of something like Soundtracks for the Blind by Swans, just with a foghorn in the background instead of maybe guitar. And though that may be an odd comparison, it's because of the atmosphere. The way that an artist like Swans captures the music is similar to how Mark Corvin captures that atmosphere. It's very repetitive, ominous. It can get on your nerves in the same way that it would get on the nerves of the characters on screen. There are points where you can hear that the characters are starting to get... The sound design is so impeccable. You'd have a character rubbing wood with their fingers and maybe their fingernails, and you can very, very slightly hear that scratching. It's subtle, but it's there. It's not in your face. It's just everything is there. Even the costumes have so much wear and tear in them. They look dirty, they look worn, they just look like they have been stranded there for so long. Everything just looks like they smell, and it's just so gross and disgusting. I love it! Even down to things like the smoke. The smoke would just simmer and stay, and it'd look very hellish. I don't know how it captures that, but it works. Everything feels so unnatural. Instead of the smoke just waving off into the distance, it just lingers and builds this atmosphere. It's similar to how Taxi Driver opens and you have the smoke coming out, and Scorsese said that was supposed to represent the character going through hell, and in a similar sense, these characters are creating their own hell. Every shot from inside the buildings feels so well crafted. Very few shots are repeated, but when there's certain events that occur, when we're following a character discover new elements of the story, where we are introduced with such unique camera angles and such unique camera movement that adds so much towards the mystery. It feels like you are a part of the story and you're trying to figure out the mystery on your own intention. One of the things I loved is how the visuals were always so, even though they were so compact, they would often be off center, they would be off position, and because of that it would add to the unease. Instead of everything looking like a Wes Anderson movie where everything's parallel, everything would be that slight bit off center. Or, for example, you'd get a shot of an eye, and instead of it being directly in the middle, it'd just be off to the right or left, just that little bit, just to make it seem weird. The story has a lot of very, very, very clear inspiration from many different sources, including Roman mythology, so even some Greek mythology. We have H.P. Lovecraft influences, folklore from the sea, we have pirate influences, even elements of Nordic folk tales. I've gone so far in this discussion without discussing the dialogue. When Robert Eggers writes a movie, he likes to capture the historical relevance of the time the movie is in. He likes to capture the dialogue and manner of speaking, the way certain characters express themselves, the way certain characters have a demeanor around them, the way the characters cut out some vowels for, instead of saying cigarette, they say cigarettes. It really captures this very early 18th century environment. A lot of it is inspired by classic literature like epics and ballads and poems. And speaking of poems, there's a lot of poetic monologues that the characters use throughout the movie that further express their characters. You have Willem Dafoe's character, who has a very captain, leader-like demeanor around him, where he feels like everything he needs to say is of importance, everything he says is of a leadership quality. He needs to propel his ideas and propel his goals onto everyone else, even if he isn't that great of a person. The character building in this movie works less from the dialogue and more so from their actions, the way they interact with the environment, with the production, with the sound design, with everything around them. The characters are not told through dialogue, the characters are told through their demeanor. What makes the dialogue so authentic are the accents. Actors were perfectly cast, and I've gone too far in this discussion without bringing up the actors now, because there is absolutely no one who would fit the role better than Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. It's such a shame that Robert Pattinson has been put into the shiny vampire demeanor, because he's such a versatile actor. He's shown lots and lots of range, especially with movies like Good Time. The highlight of this movie is definitely Willem Dafoe. Willem Dafoe's performance in this movie is career defining. I can't imagine anyone else pulling it off, down to his accent, the way he changes his tone of voice, the way he changes his character over time. The arcs, not just him, but both actors go through, are so subtle that they're very easy to miss. You can hear the change in demeanor in their tone of voice. You can see how their dialogue changes over time. But it's a movie where it's asking you to focus on these little character things, and not many actors can pull this off. I cannot see anyone filling in this role except for maybe Patchy the Pirate. Both actors had a huge understanding of their physical attributes towards their character. It's not just a simple Willem Dafoe limps. He's old, he's weak, he needs to understand that he can't do everything himself, so he gets someone else to do what he can. Robert Pattinson needs to know that he can do much more than Willem Dafoe. The characters consistently bounce off of each other. There's a lot of sexual tension in the air. I can easily go into a lot of spoilers, but I'm trying not to. If given the wrong writer or director, it wouldn't have worked at all, but everyone behind the scenes had a purpose in telling the story, and they pulled it off perfectly. Some of the shots themselves are using such great use of blocking. A lot of the drive in this movie is the mystery. You're not specifically told what you're looking at. The whole understanding of how your mind works and that whole what the fuck is that is the enjoyment of the movie. You're trying to piece the puzzles in your head, and a lot of it ends up being personal understanding. What do you personally believe is going on? It never feels cheap though. Robert Eggers leaves out all the puzzle pieces, and he's filled in the outline, but he hasn't filled in the middle bits, and he wants you to put them together yourself because he has that trust in you. We need movies with that trust. We need movies to not tell you what the answers are, because movies are to ask questions, not to tell you answers. Everything in the movie just fits perfectly in the puzzle. Like, if the movie didn't have that aspect ratio, it wouldn't fit the tone of the movie. If it wasn't in black and white, I don't see myself enjoying this movie nearly as much. Evidently, The Lighthouse Tallied Up provides one of the most unique film experiences that an audience can endure. The movie takes you on a roller coaster ride of a claustrophobic paranoia that opens up a multitude of questions for you to answer. From the acting to the writing to the sets to the atmosphere, it's clear that everyone put their full effort into creating this film. It is impossible for me to give this movie a rating lower than a 10 out of 10. Wow. Good work. Good show. Nice. Wow. Proud of you. Wow. Good work. Good show. Proud of you. 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 Proud of you.